Design Build Ascend Studios with Michael Ham. He and I have known each other for a good year or so. We've been trying to find some synergies we have. He's a guru with a lot of different things that I'm not a guru with, and so as a result, I think we line up pretty well. He's a master in air quality. He's a master in water quality, and we wanted to partner up and add lighting quality to those three to make that the trifecta. But he's also an expert in tea, and so we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about him and his tea operations and his expertise in that world, and I think that will be very interesting. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, John.
No problem. So where do you live right now? You're here from out of town today.
Yeah, so I live in a place called Westchester County. It's about an hour north of Manhattan, so New York area.
New York, yeah. I'm sure you're not missing the cold right now. So.
Just getting off the plane last week in LA is just a breath of fresh air, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the how you got into what sort of the air and water quality.
Sure.
And maybe how that relates to what you do with tea, because I think that's a whole nother conversation.
So with anything that happens or what you see now, there's obviously a footprint, right? You have to look into the past. So just to give you a little sense of why I'm in this field, like my mom was a nurse, my brother's a doctor. I majored in kinesiology. I love sports all my life. That's why we can talk sports, right?
Yeah, rock, chalk, Jayhawk.
Yeah, I pretty much, it's one of my passions growing up, sports. And which is what drove me to, I played ice hockey in Canada. I grew up in Canada.
You played ice hockey?
Yeah. I played up to the college level.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So I decided in college to major in kinesiology. And I minored in human nutrition because I felt that was really important to preserve and enhance human health. Right?
Oh, big time.
And then in my professional career, I took the degree and I actually started. I taught high school for a little bit.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so that was an extremely enriching experience because I've always been a pretty introverted person. I still am. But teaching, really, you gotta get out of break out of your shell, right?
Absolutely.
So that helped me tremendously. And then, I believe it or not, I actually moved to New York. I decided to stop teaching. I enjoyed it, but I had a great opportunity in New York to make a bigger impact, global impact with education. And I joined a nonprofit, and it was a week before 9/11. So I moved to New York, and then a week later, 9/11 happened. So it was just a crazy period of time.
So you were there?
I was there right across the Hudson River, could see all the smoke, everything happening. It was just surreal. It's like a movie was playing out, right?
Yeah.
Where were you?
I was recovering from back surgery. I had just had my spine fused, and I was heavy on drugs watching television, and they interrupted what we were doing. Whatever I was watching, I have no idea. And I'm like, come on, that can't be real.
Movie, right?
Yeah, I mean, that can't be real. I mean, I was so high on the opioids. Right. It was just, I couldn't believe it. It was so surreal. And, and of course we all have our connections and our stories to the story, to the buildings that fell. One of them was my aunt had one of her best friends was a chef at the top floor of the second building. And as soon as the first building got hit, they all walked down the stairs and escaped. So they were literally at the very top of the building. I mean, they were at the restaurant that's at the top, and they were able to survive only because they immediately started walking out.
It's a game of inches because other people chose not to, and then they perished, right?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I just got goosebumps.
Yeah. So there are few events in our history or our lives where you can remember exactly where you were. That's one of them. And we just experienced in the last 2 years, COVID. 40 years from now, we're going to say, where were you during COVID, right?
Oh, yeah.
We will know exactly. So I think these events, whether it's 9/11 or COVID, it really gives us a time to reflect on what life is about and what's more important than life. And if we actually value our fellow man next to us instead of always like fighting, you're wrong, I'm right, but just as a fellow human being, right? We're all the same, right?
I equate it to being a neighbor.
Yeah.
You know, if we can talk about taking care of our family and what we would do for our family, but then we say, okay, what would you do for your neighbor? Well, there was a certain level of things you would do for your neighbor. What would you do for someone in your state? Well, that list gets shorter, right? And then what do you do for someone that lives in the Ukraine or someone that lives in Syria? Your list is now very, very short of things you would do. But the reality is that as the globe shrinks, it is easier to do something for somebody that you can help directly.
Right.
And one of the things I did for the Ukraine, which I didn't actually mean to do it, but I had a friend of mine who his family is in Ukraine, and I was chatting about it because it was obviously current news, and he's like, man, this is all I'm doing right now is figuring out logistics to try to get my family out. And he goes, I just sent all of my money, every dollar I had, out of my bank account and sent it to them. And he goes, and if you have any room for that, I mean, send me some money. And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm struggling too. You know, it's like I can't give you a lot of money, and I didn't know what he wanted. And so he is part of a friend group of people that play squash. And so I posted this question to my friend group. I said, how many of you guys would be willing to put in some money together? And they got, well, how much do you need? And I'm like, so I texted back to him, and he said, well, I could use $3,000 to help get these families. We raised over $5,000 in less than 24 hours and wired it to him within 24 hours directly to his bank account. And he sent that directly in multiple payments to different people in Ukraine to get them. And then he updated us with where they were. They're in Poland, they're in Lviv, they're in Kharkiv, I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, and he goes, I just got, it was heartbreaking. He goes, and I added another $2,000 to your 4,000 or your 5,000. Right. So he's totally in it, but it's still on a situation where we're definitely separated. You know, it's not direct. I don't have family there. Right. I've got friends, and I know what it's like to be, needing help, and so our guys totally stepped out, and I was so proud of our team. I mean, I cried multiple times over that because I couldn't believe how fast our guys were willing to write a check and send help. And
that's fantastic.
So
that's great.
Even though not all of them could afford it either. So. Yeah. So your early story begins with 9/11 and a jump into like the world of New York.
Yeah. So my time in the U.S. has been kind of varied, but it's really most of the jobs or roles I've taken had something to do with health and wellness. So I used to work at an organic farm.
Okay.
for several years. So I'm not a farmer by any means, but it was part of a historic property where we had a little ranch hotel. We had the organic farm. So I learned so much in the 5 years I was there, the importance of what farming does, how it actually sequesters carbon from the air. Mm-hmm. We're going through a climate crisis. It's because there's a lot of carbon in the air creating greenhouse gas effects. And our planet is heating up, right? So the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, they had a big report last year. They updated it just 2 weeks ago. Pretty much we're teetering, right?
We've been teetering for a while.
We've been teetering for a while. If we hit 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, it's pretty much point of no return. Mm-hmm. It's just going to get worse, and we're already experiencing it, but it's going to get worse and worse and worse, and there's no turning back, right? Yeah. So what does that mean? Once again, a lot of people dying, a lot of people suffering, governments going to war because of certain things. So it's something to think about. A lot of people, they hear climate change, they're like, I can't do anything about it. I'm just one person. But one person plus one plus, plus two plus four plus 8, you think about it, right?
There was on the subject of finding things that can help with global warming, one of them that is a big problem is methane gas. Yeah. And there was a great report, and I just posted it on Twitter to Elon Musk saying, hey, you interested in funding a startup? So get this. Yeah. There is 30% of the methane gas is produced by livestock.
Yeah, cows.
And so they found there was a farmer on the East Coast, Nova Scotia area, I think, or at least related to the University of Nova Scotia, that found a red, not algae, a red,
I heard about that.
a seaweed, a
It
red
reduces,
seaweed
yeah.
that eliminates, not reduces, eliminates the gas out of livestock.
Yeah.
And you need only 0.2% of this red seaweed added to their food. So if you can just, it's just like a powder. You just sprinkle it on all their food or have it built into the food, make it a requirement, and you eliminate 30% of the methane gas being produced.
That's huge.
That's you can't make big movements like that. You just can't. I mean, you can make incremental. You can do little things. And so this guy, it was on accident. He was basically he was an organic farmer trying to find ways to feed his cows in an organic way, and found out that they didn't produce gas. And then they found a better algae that even did a better job. So it's unbelievable. Think about it. I mean, you like eliminate the gas problem from cows is such a big impact. It seems, and it's just, you can farm this stuff. So I said, Elon Musk, find us someone who wants to invest in growing these red. I can't pronounce it, but it's a red seaweed, and we can do big steps in global warming.
Solves a big problem.
Yeah.
So I mentioned to you before we started here that I have a lot of mentors. It's important to have mentors. Otherwise,
I missed out on that.
Spinning your wheels, like, how do I do this?
I missed out.
Right?
I didn't have good mentors.
It's never too late. Never too late.
Well, no, I figured that out much later, but it took me a while to even have mentors.
Yeah. So one of my mentors, who's really more like a health mentor, like physical health, I learned from him that to live a life of quality and longevity, you really have to, and I studied nutrition, so I know the basics, right? Input and output. If you put hamburgers, Big Macs every day, French fries every day, versus another person, vegetables, organic, no toxins, high nutrient density, antioxidants. Nutrient dense, because your body has to function, feed off of that, grow, repair the cells. Blood has to circulate, go to areas where they're suffering, repair it, recover, right? You got to exercise, right? You got to exercise, you got to sleep well. So it's really the input versus output concept. And light is one of them. Light is input.
Sure.
Breathing is one of them. What we drink, what we eat, right? So I learned that concept 20 plus years ago. Even though I had a nutrition degree, you really don't think about it deeply. you just learn stuff, right?
Yeah, especially the industrialization of our food intake has been such a major problem.
Right.
It's a health crisis because of our industrialized food.
Cancer rates 200 years ago were less than 0.5.
Right.
200.
I know.
And then now they're 35%. I usually ask people, there's a high chance that there's someone in your immediate family or a good close friend that's been afflicted with cancer. Like it's very rare unless you've lived in the blue zones.
And I had a friend of mine. She's in the construction world, and she actually cured her own cancer by just changing her diet. I mean, they're like, come on. I mean, no, that really happened.
Yeah.
And it happened to somebody I know personally. And she was an animate, proponent of proper diet, organic food, no pesticides, all of that. And, she eliminated a ton of diets. And there's plenty of people that have solved their health problems with elimination diets, finding out what the problem was. Right. Because the doctor's going to go write you a prescription and go do this. And it's like, come on. They can't, I don't know. I'm a big fan of solving your problem with food.
Totally.
And
but the system has been played out that way, so people are preconditioned. If I'm sick, I go to the doctor, I take a drug. But they're not understanding that it could momentarily fix that issue, but then it leads to 3-4 other things that are negative. Then it becomes a bigger problem later on, right? And who feeds all of that? it's brainwashing, right?
Yeah, we don't want to get this podcast
We don't want to
canceled.
we don't want to
because
get
of
into
our
that.
conspiracy
But
theories.
anyways, Hippocrates said, "Let thy food be thy medicine, and let medicine be thy food." It's a typical
Right.
example of what you talked about. If you really focus on your food, what you bring into your body, you're going to give yourself a good chance, right? Then I started getting very interested. I had a kid. My kid was born 2005, and we were in Manhattan, and Manhattan's it doesn't have very clean air. Bought my first air purifier, 2005. So it's been almost 20 years.
Okay.
For my kid. It wasn't even for me. Otherwise, I would have had one before, right?
Oh, interesting.
So I got to have my kid breathe clean air in a polluted city. That's the moment where I started to learn more about air quality, more about water quality. And then I started, I got my inspections and testing license. So I started going into homes and people who got sick or people who wanted to test their air quality, people who had flood and there was mold. We would go in and do vacuum pump testing, send it to the lab, write a report. They'd read it, they'd have no idea, so you'd have to explain it to them in layman's terms. Doing it over and over and over, I realized there's got to be a better way to do this, right? Everything manual takes like 3, 4, 5 days. They don't really understand it. You got to explain it to them. It's invisible. And I love technology. I've always loved technology. Like on the way here, I just remember, like on the way here, you just plug in, you get Apple Play, type in the address, you're good to go. It's so easy today.
Yeah.
Back in the day, 15 years ago, I'd have a trio. You'd have to download maps, right? You'd have to make sure you have the map of where you are. Otherwise, you're driving and you don't have the map downloaded. It just goes blank.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're in LA, what was it? It was called the big paper piece.
Yeah, AAA maps and stuff too, right?
Yeah.
So we come a long way, but in terms of air quality in the home, I was like, there's got to be a better way. And then did a lot of research and no monitors. They're all like research grade monitors. And then finally around 2014, 15, you could see like consumer grade monitors coming out. So I bought them all. After 2 months, this sensor goes bad, that sensor goes, so they're not accurate, right? So I was like, how do you do this? How do you do this? So the great thing is now the sensors are so accurate. They still have a long way to go, but they'll give you a good idea, a trend, a good sense of what the air quality is, even though it's not pinpoint accurate.
And isn't it one of the, whether it's monitored or not, it's whether you get notified that the system, starting to get bogged down or get, filters need to be replaced.
Right.
People, put pieces of paper down at the time and say, replace the filter in 6 months.
Yeah.
You really need that data accurate, and you need it on your phone, which is where all your data, your information comes from.
Right.
So finding systems that are integrated into your, your phone systems and Wi-Fi and all that's been, I'm sure, a huge benefit.
So John, I'll give you a clear example. What if you're driving a car and the fuel light or the oil change light never comes on? You'll just have no idea, and what'll happen? The car will die at some point, right?
Right.
So what happens? The mentality in your car, if you see the gas light go on, you know what's going to happen. So you go and put more gas in.
Right.
The oil change light comes on, you know what's going to happen. So you go, even though it may be a little late, you get your oil change. But your air filter at home, no one ever changes it.
Right, because they know it's not in front of their face all
No one
the
ever
time.
changes it. So now it's the same concept. On your phone, on your app, change your filter. It's time to change it. If you don't change it, it could break your fan and your air handler. Then it's going to be a big expense. So it's a similar concept.
That does remind me. I do have to replace my filter on my furnace. It's like I don't even remember when the last time I changed that filter, because you just leave it and forget it. But I can tell you, my uncle, he was always, when he would come visit our family, he was such a funny guy. He was Midwest, South Dakota. And he'll never watch this podcast, so I can talk about him. But he would bring in filters. He would buy filters and bring it for my mom. It's like, you forgot to change your filter. Because he knew it needed to be replaced before he even checked.
Yeah,
you just
yeah. Still, the majority of homes, they don't
No.
have these mechanisms to
No.
change the filter. And when you don't change the filter, especially when it's getting more and more clogged, causes a pressure buildup, and then your fan has to work harder. And
more
what
electricity
happens?
load.
More
and-
electricity.
yeah.
So actually, if you have a good filtration system with a low pressure drop but high filtration levels, you can breathe healthier air, cleaner air. You will reduce your energy bill because you're not letting your fan work as hard. And yeah, it's better for planet, people,
Right.
and your pocketbook.
Right. And so, but you sell, when you talk about what you know, you have a nice offering on, what's your website now called? Because it changed.
The company's called RePure, so our website's repure.io.
RePure.io.
Yeah.
So when you go there, your sales mechanism is really geared towards hospitality or high-end homes or homes just in general. What's your market that you're going after?
So right now we're really B2B2C. So through the custom integrator partners that we have, our pro dealers, we train them on how to implement them in homes. And right now it's predominantly luxury residential, but we've started to talk to builders about getting these systems in standard so that people don't really have to think about, like you said, it's a lot of people, if they even have a monitor, it'll maybe show red or bad air quality when the wife is cooking, but they don't know what to do, right? So we work with the builders to try to allow systems to work in behind the scenes. Like I'll ask you, John, so if you have a thermostat and your preference is 72 degrees, if you set it at 72 and it gets really cold and it goes to 70, what's going to happen? The heat will kick on, go up. And opposite in the summertime, if it becomes like 74 because it's so hot outside, it'll kick on and bring it back down to 72. It's the same concept with air quality. When the air quality goes above, out of range, system kicks on, air purifier starts to happen, brings all those levels back to where it's acceptable.
So how often does it change like that? I mean, I can recognize the weather change and even the daily change of temperature. But how does the air quality change through that often? How does that happen?
So outdoor air quality has a huge factor on what indoor quality is, because especially with looser or less tight homes, because you have less insulation, you get more air infiltration. So you're going to get a lot of the outdoor air inside. And also when we open the door to the outside, pollution is going to come in. And we bring a lot of pollution. And even just sitting here, we're actually contributing to the pollution in the air by what we're breathing. It's actually coming out of our skin, right? So those things will always just not like spiking, but they're constantly going to be growing incrementally. So when the monitor picks it up, activate the system and bring it down. But the certain events that will cause it to spike are cooking, especially when you don't turn the fan on. And the studies show that when you're actually cooking, the particulate levels are worse than any place on earth. Like typically India, Pakistan, China, those are the areas that are ranked #1 with air pollution. When you cook in your home, it goes above those levels. So that's why you have to keep your vent hood on, because it takes all those particulates, VOCs, sends it outside. You're still going to get some, but it's going to be massively reduced. So
that's an argument for cooking outdoors more often, isn't it? That's using my grill more often. You tell me to use my smoker and grill more often.
Just make sure it's organic beef.
Oh yeah, well, beef is so expensive right now. It's unbelievable. It is.
Everything's inflation, right?
Oh yeah. Well, it's worse than inflation. It's like, it's associated with supply chain issues, So it's inflation is like just natural things. I think that change, but it's I don't know. Do you ever drive a gas car or anything like that?
I do, but I've set my mind that my next car is going to be electric. So I'm preparing for it. I just got a solar roof with a battery for my house.
Whose batteries do you use?
I use the Powerwall.
Okay, from Tesla. So you're all setting up for a Tesla buy? Is that what you're going to be buying?
Not really. I mean,
Now you have to. You got the Tesla wall.
I have a Tesla roof, so
Tesla,
I have
come
Tesla. So
on.
I do,
so you've
but
got the app. You got to buy the car.
there's some other brands I'm eyeing that I like more, but yeah, I may just go with it. We'll see.
I think you'd have to. I mean, just from the technology that he's developed in his artificial intelligence through the car stuff that you can do with self-driving and just he's so far ahead on battery technology and so far ahead on even just the electric motors. Yeah. I mean, did you watch Battery Day? Did you watch that?
Yeah.
Oh, that blew my mind.
Yeah. It's amazing what he's done.
Yeah.
I think he's really taken the Ford model, assembly line efficiency, and he's really been able to apply it to electric cars because it's amazing how much output they're doing the last couple of years.
Now he just needs to get into organic farming of red seaweed.
Elon Musk, if you go back, he's talked several times about HVAC, heat pump technology to reduce it, and pristine air quality. He's already done it in his cars. It's out of all cars, the Tesla probably has the best air quality, equipped with the best air quality system,
and the least or most efficient
heat pump system.
Heat pump system.
Oh yeah.
So he's unbelievable in what he's doing.
So he's going to try to extend it. Now he's trying to move in from automobile to home with the solar roof and the battery. And I do believe in the next couple of years he's going to try to tackle the heat pump and the HVAC system with really advanced filtration. Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just big fan.
Yeah.
Big fan.
Me too.
And so so you've got the water and air quality, and then you seem to be also having an interest in organic farming. Can you tell me a little more about what you're doing there?
It's kind of what we alluded to before about inputs and really being conscious of what's coming into your body. Okay. And for me, with my education, my interest and my passion on how to help people live healthier, it really boils down to food, water, and air.
Right.
That's why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. And so you might say tea is not a food, but it's certainly an element. So the way that I explain it is our teas that are grown over on a tropical island in South Korea, volcanic island.
Really?
So as anyone can kind of guess, if you have a volcanic island, the soil is mineral rich, right? Because you have
absolutely.
The land has been cultivated regeneratively for over 20 years, and I'm sure a lot of your audience have heard of regenerative farming, regenerative real estate, but regenerative, what it in terms of our teas, what it really means is the focus is on creating the healthiest soil. Right? So when you create the healthiest soil through and the soil microbiome, just like our gut microbiome, all the interaction that goes between insects, bacteria, microorganisms, creating the best environment for nutrients to be taken up through the root to the crop. So healthy soil equals healthy crop. And when we input it into our body, the nutrients spread, and we're going to have a healthy body.
So, right? I know nothing about tea. Tell me a little bit about the plants and sort of pesticides.
Okay.
Is it more like a grapevine where is there a season to it, or is it always growing the leaves?
Yeah. You'll see a lot of teas if you go to a coffee shop or the grocery. You'll see the tea bags and stuff. So just a very 30,000-foot overview on tea. The true tea, which means tea, the original tea, it originates or comes from the plant called Camellia sinensis. There's two kinds of Camellia sinensis. One known to grown in Asamica, which is India, and then others that are traditionally in China, South Korea, Japan, other places in Africa, Malawi. So if it's a Camellia sinensis plant, that is tea. Oh. And what tea is known for is the abundance of antioxidants. So
Interesting.
why are antioxidants? Just reflected in the name, anti is against oxidants, right? So what happens is we have cells and they die and they regenerate, they get produced, they die, they're produced, right? But I'm going to take a very recent example of COVID. So COVID-19, I'm sure your audience has heard of spike protein, right?
Yeah, the spike
So
protein.
if there's COVID in the air and I breathe it in, and the spike protein actually latches itself onto a cell, drives it in, is able to infect it, and then more spike, and then it becomes a host,
Correct.
and then it starts spreading to other cells, and that's where you get COVID-19, and then you get the symptoms, right?
Right.
So what antioxidants does, it repairs what the free radicals. That's a bad example. The example what I wanted to give is there's a study on green tea over the last couple of years, several of them, that show that it prevents the spike protein from making it to become to a host cell, binding to a host cell. So I always like keep green tea in my mouth when I was going to CES and big events, tens of thousands of people. I would have my mask
Before
on.
COVID? Oh no.
Oh no, during COVID.
Okay, got it.
I would put green tea candy or tablets in my mouth so that if I ever somehow a COVID particle came into my mouth, I would have something that was antiviral to kind of mitigate against the COVID.
So
right?
why is it called green tea if it's is it a different leaf?
No, same
Okay.
leaf. So everything is
Wait, what?
everything is Camellia sinensis, and I'll tell you that's a great question because most people don't know this. But let's say you harvest a Camellia sinensis leaf. As soon as you process it, meaning you stop the oxidation.
As soon as you pull it from the
No,
plant?
when you pull it, you got to heat it up so that the oxidation stops. So what is oxidation? I'll
right.
give you an example.
Yeah, oxidation is
If
bad.
if you put an apple on a counter, what happens is it starts to get oxidized, and over time, then you start to see it turning colors and then brown and then starts rotting. That's because of oxidation.
Right.
But with tea, if you put it under high temperature, you stop the oxidation. So when you stop that oxidation from as soon as you pluck it, that becomes green tea. So it's not a non-oxidized Camellia sinensis.
Okay, so if it dries naturally, it changes colors, it gets brown,
Yeah.
all these other things.
So let's say you pluck it and then you leave it a little, it's going to oxidize, right? So when it's half oxidized, it's something called oolong tea.
Oolong.
Yeah, oolong.
I recognize those names as well, of course.
Yeah, so it's all from the Camellia sinensis plant.
Really?
Yeah. And then when you fully oxidize it, like all the way to this end of the spectrum, you oxidize it, that's black tea.
So there's less, obviously there would be less, health benefits to black tea compared to green tea?
No.
Is that what you argued with
Okay,
that?
so I always explain to people green tea is going to be your most abundant antioxidants, good stuff, right? Caffeine too. Black tea, oolong tea will also have antioxidants, will have caffeine, but the levels of catechins and the different flavonoids, which are all good for our body, they change through that oxidation process, so they're a little different.
Okay.
So, the tastes are vastly different, right?
Absolutely.
So the majority of the market, 80% drink black tea because they like it more than the green tea, right?
But there's still some benefit to the black tea.
Oh,
just
yeah,
not-
yeah, yeah,
just not as
because
much as the
you
green
still get the antioxidants. You actually get more caffeine. So if you want to live a healthier lifestyle and you're a heavy coffee drinker, black tea is your best bet because what happens is you get more caffeine, so you're used to a higher caffeine level, more energy, but it's less than coffee. So I explain coffee because caffeine in coffee, boom, crash, boom, crash. That's why you have to keep drinking it.
Got it.
That's
Right.
why you have to keep drinking it all day. But the caffeine in tea, it combines with an amino acid called L-theanine, and when they combine, it's a energy boost, but it's sustained and it's stable. So you don't get the up and down. And then the thing is, caffeine in coffee will give you an energy boost, but the caffeine and L-theanine in tea will give you the energy boost plus focus plus calmness. it's a triple threat because of that combination of the two.
That's
Yeah.
that blows my mind.
Yeah.
Actually, I had no idea there was a big difference between the caffeines associated with tea and coffee because I'm a big coffee drinker.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I only do one coffee
yeah,
a day.
yeah.
It's a big coffee,
Yeah,
but it's one coffee a day.
Yeah.
Can you go back to the green tea?
Yeah.
When you're saying you're plucking the leaf, does that, first of all, I have two questions.
Yeah.
One, is there a season to the tea leaf as far as, because you look at deciduous trees and they're always got leaves growing and they falling and they're growing and falling, or do you have to pluck it during a specific season? And if you do, when you say to make it green tea, it has to be frozen in time fairly quickly, processed fairly quickly. Is that like that day? Do they process it that day? What's the speed?
So it's
for
a
that?
great question. So we have the winter season, and so once the weather starts warming up in April, typically around mid-April, is when the first shoots come up after winter. And the first shoots, we call it like first flush. It's most valuable, most expensive, because you're going to get great level of all these great things that come out of green tea, the flavonoids, the antioxidants, caffeine, but the taste will be supreme at that time.
Really?
Because it just encountered a harsh winter, and it's that first shoot that comes up. It's the most valuable. Then you have the second flush. You have the third flush. So the further you go away, the value is less. But you're still going to get all the benefits.
Is there a brand? Is that, do people have it on their labels?
So our tea brand, Wild Orchard, we have early spring, we have mid-spring, we have late spring. So early spring is going to be, that's the one that wins all the awards, because when you go into competition, you want to send your best, right?
Wow.
And so that wins like gold in pretty much every tea competition the last couple of years. And then you have mid-spring. Obviously, it costs more, so people still want the benefits of the tea, but they may not be able to afford it, so they'll go to mid-spring or even late spring. And then some people don't like green tea because it's got that earthy taste. That's why 80% drink black tea, because it's got more of that heavy taste, right? Yeah. But I always recommend, don't discount green tea. Just mix it up. Yeah. Just mix it up.
What about powdered? You see green tea powdered. What's that?
Matcha. So in Japan, it's called matcha in Japan. We call it powder. But a lot of people don't know this. But let's say you brew your tea, right? And then you have your leaves there. The studies show that only less than 5% of the antioxidants in the leaves come out into the water.
Less than
5% of all the good stuff in
the good stuff in the leaf
comes into the water.
Into the water when you brew it.
When you brew it. So when you're drinking tea after a brew, you're really only unlocking 5% of the potential good stuff that is in the leaves. Can you
just eat the leaf?
That's what I do.
You do?
I do.
Oh, I'm just making that up. So people eat okay.
So where matcha has grown in the U.S. market is because matcha is the powderized leaf. So it's got all the antioxidants in there, so it's much more potent. Wow. So people don't want to drink 30 cups of green tea. They'd rather just have a matcha because it's so concentrated with the antioxidants, right?
And you're much more efficient. Yeah. We talk about efficiency with all kinds of things, right?
Yeah. But tea is also, it's thousands of years of history, tea, right?
Right.
It started wars, it just has such a deep history, it's fascinating. But one of the great things about tea is you can sit down like this and enjoy a cup of tea together and just talk and relax, right? Whereas if you're always just like matcha, boom, and then you're on the go and stuff. So I always say, mix it up. Sometimes have matcha. Sometimes invite your friend over, have a nice brewed tea. Teach them about the leaves, how important they are. You could some people that I know, they dry the leaves and then they just put it on top of their salad later, or they put it on top of their pizza, and you don't really taste it. But you get all the antioxidants out of it.
So when I go to the store and you've got all these different flavors, is it still the same tea leaf but just added flavors?
So there are some things that are called blended teas, and we have those. But our blended teas are the anchor is green tea, and then we add like strawberry hibiscus or like peppermint, or you can add different florals, and we call it a blended tea because it could suit the palate of people that don't like green tea. So we're trying to make tea, try to allow teas to fit into a person's lifestyle. So we have to create different types of taste, right? So that's what we do. But as long as the green tea is the anchor or the base there, that's still a true tea. But then you have things like yerba mate, rooibos tea in South Africa. Those are not from the Camellia sinensis. These are different herbs or trees or plants, but they're just brewed and called tea. But the traditionalists will, that's why the term true tea has come out. True tea is only Camellia sinensis. The rest are just like herbal teas or different types of teas. And not to say that those are bad.
Does they still have antioxidants?
They have antioxidants. They have other features. But to me, the green tea, pound for pound or ounce for ounce, hard to beat that in terms of overall health benefit.
Did you grow up drinking tea? I mean, I'm just curious on how you fell in love with this whole industry. Which, by the way, this is what I wanted to talk about, because you and I know we talk about light, air, and water quality all the time. But you and I never really talked about the tea part. So I'm really glad you came in today to talk about tea. So.
You may be shocked, but I grew up drinking Slurpees, big gulps, because I play sports a lot, right?
Sure.
And what do you do after a good game? You just go to the local 7-Eleven and it's part of the fraternity, right? We enjoy the game and then we all drink this stuff together, right? So I didn't drink tea much, other than when we go to a Chinese restaurant, they give the jasmine tea, right?
Right.
But when about 20 years ago, the tea that we are carrying now, or the tea that we offer to the market today, I was exposed to it, and I've been to the farm, so I was amazed by it. And I wouldn't drink a lot. I would drink maybe once a week, maybe even once a month, not a lot. But 3.5 years ago, maybe, we had an opportunity to bring that tea and be the exclusive distributor globally. And I was like, if I'm going to do this seriously and I know how good the tea is, then I got to take it seriously. So for 3.5 years, almost 4 years now, I've been drinking 2 liters every day. And what I can tell you is, never been sick the whole time, not once.
Right.
Never got COVID. Well, knock on wood.
Right.
It doesn't mean I won't get it, but I've been extremely healthy because it just makes sense. You're putting tons of antioxidants that are reversing cell damage.
Yeah.
That are, when you're about to get sick, it's antiviral, antibacterial. So it's like a force field kind of. It's a shield. So that just explains it. Along with air quality, water quality, it's the inputs, right? So if no one thinks about it, like if you actually have an honest conversation with 10 of your closest people and you talk about these things, the majority will not think about what is going into their body. Yeah. But it has a huge impact, which is really why I do what I do.
I really think it's the biggest impact is what we, first of all, it's all the inputs, like you said. So we have a couple inputs. Yeah. We have what goes into our mouth, and that's probably the biggest input that we have in our world. Yeah. After that, it's what we see. Yeah. I would say number 2 is actually what comes through our skin. Yeah. And then the third one would be what we see.
Also ears.
And ears, well, nose, but those are going through but even when you think about the skin, we still don't know what the benefits are for being exposed to the daylight. Yeah. Like, we understand to get sunburns and all these other things, and we say, well, we know what's too much sunlight, and we also know what is too little sunlight. Yeah. But we also know that you have to have sunlight.
You have to.
And the question is how much and why. Yeah. And the why is really the big question. Right. And I think there's a lot of really smart people talking about that right now, and it's exciting to hear and know a little bit about that.
It is.
And I feel like in our industry, I'm architectural engineer by trade, and we've been doing lighting design for a while, and we start to learn about the light as if you were learning about tea, right? So you learn about the all the wavelengths and all the pieces that are associated with that, and maybe some of the features that how we deliver it. Maybe it's, maybe it has a flicker to it. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe, what color temperatures do they have? What's the makeup of that light?
Right.
And now everyone's more curious about it, just like they want to know more about their tea.
Sure.
So it's been, it's a parallel time in a lot of industry about what we are doing to ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, the things that we did with light, with fluorescent light or metal halide, and looking at the distribution the distribution of light and what colors that you actually were getting and the spiking.
Right.
You wonder, like, why would we want to live like this? This is horrible light.
Yeah.
And we look at it back and we're like, well, that was needed and that was part of the evolution of technology, and maybe so, but we can look back at it and go, that was bad.
Yeah.
I mean, this was not good. This was not good light.
Yeah.
And so to be able to see that change and to know what is good light now and learn more even so as we go through. Even COVID, people are understanding that there's an element to being what we would call the best disinfectant, right? The best sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Right.
That's actually a coined phrase, meaning like to shine light on a bad guy or on a corrupt system.
Yeah.
Sunlight is the best disinfectant, but it's so true, even in our real life. I mean, sunlight, and then what do? We suck everyone inside, and I think made it worse. I mean, you should have forced everyone to be outside all the time. Get everyone outside, get them exposed to sunlight, get their vitamin D levels up.
Right.
All of the things that are, that we now know we're contributing factors to, our health.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe the future is, you're required to be outside for a certain amount of every day when you have a job,
Hey, John, I think we're similar in age, at least in the era, right? And
our kids are only a year apart, so
I know that I can say with confidence that you probably had a similar experience to me. But we were always outside when we were young. I remember playing with butterflies, snails, walking outside, playing with friends. We were always outside. And then when the summers were long, we'd go home like at 10 o'clock at night because the sun was higher. And
the rule was come home when the street lights come on. Right? That was the rule.
But now the young generation, our kids' generation, they're indoor generation. It's so sad. So it's homework for us, right? How do we reverse that? Right, because it's going to have long-term effects.
I agree, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming in. I know you were in town for an event, building your companies, and you took a little time out of your day to come here. When do you fly home?
So I'm here for the Natural Foods Expo West.
Okay.
It's going on until Saturday, and then I'll be heading back on Sunday. So, but I'm so glad.
Do you have any tea on you?
Yeah, I'm gonna give you some. Yeah, I got some. Yeah.
I was gonna buy some.
No.
Well, we can do an exchange. I got some stuff for you. So
sounds great.
Mike, I mean, I'm so glad we came in to do this, and even though we're still 6 feet apart, we're both pretty healthy guys, and I don't, we're just happy to have you in and share your story, and I hope that some people will visit. Why don't you tell me what your websites are?
Also,
how can I get a hold of you?
The tea is Wild Orchard, not Orchid,
Orchard.
wildorchard.com, and then the healthy home is RePureio.
.io. RePureio and wildorchard.com. And we'll leave that at the bottom of the YouTube video, so you can click on it. So, thanks again for your time. I really enjoyed this. I'm really glad we did it.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, John.
Absolutely.
That was good. One take.